fun to sit down and realize that you have read a lot more books than you usually read in a month, until you also realize that you're gonna have to hold every single one of those up in front of the camera. My shoulders are already tired. Hello, my lovely friends, it's Margaret. Welcome back to my channel. Today, we are going to be talking about all of the books that I read in May. So far, May has been my most prolific reading month this year. It's not a competition, but I am also a numbers girly. So like when I see those numbers going up, something inside of me just feels fulfilled. I read 13 books this month, which is pretty much double what I normally read, and a lot of that is thanks to graphic novels. I also had a pretty good reading month. There were a lot of rereads. There were a lot of books that I've been wanting to read for a while that they did not disappoint, and it's so nice when that happens. So most of my reads this month were 4 or 5 stars, and I just am pleased with that. We did a good job picking what I wanted to read this month. Before I get into what I read last month, I just want to give everybody a quick reminder that the Weekend Word Nerdathon is coming back again sometime in July for the mid-year Scramble. It's going to be really fun. I'm doing it similar to last year, but we've upped the ante. I thought I was sure on the dates, but now, due to life things and personal things and family things that are going to be happening the weekend I was planning on doing it, I think we may actually end up moving it to the second weekend in July. I will have an announcement video coming out soon with the finalized dates, the teams, yes, we have teams this time, and with all of the prompts and all of that good stuff that you need to know for the 2022 mid-year reading Scramble. So, there's a reason we're wearing this shirt, and that is because we read a lot of Batman. The first 2 books that we are going to be talking about are books that I read for my Books That Inspired the Batman reading vlog. If you would like to check that out, I will have it linked up top in the cards. I read Batman Year 1 last month, and then I continued that on reading The Long Halloween by Jeff Loeb and Tim Sally. This is a Batman like Year 2 or 3 story. It is about Bruce towards the beginning of his career as Batman, but he still has been Batman. He's established as Batman and has been for a bit of time in this story. What ends up happening here is we have a killer who is killing people on the holidays. He actually ends up in this very conflicted space where he starts to suspect that he might know the killer, and it is someone that is very close to him and someone who he cares about. And so we get to see him struggle with the fact that, like, does he trust this person? Does he not trust this person? He's also dealing with the fact that Selina has come into his life, which is... Their interactions in this book are so good, and I had forgotten how good they were, because this woman saves his ass without even knowing his ass needed saving, and I'm just like, this is a power couple. This is how they work. I love them so much. I mean, Bruce always knows when people need saving. He always knows, because he is a little bit obsessive about the people that he cares about, but again, considering what happened to his parents, can you blame him for being like, you know, maybe I'll put a tracker in your suit to his sons, so he always knows where they are. If you are new to my channel, you will know. No, you won't. You will not know. If you're new to my channel, you will not know that Jeff Loeb is one of my favorite people to write for DC. He actually is the writer for my favorite Batman arc, storyline, graphic novel, Batman Hush. Highly recommend you read that one if you're wanting to read Batman. Such a good one. But this is one of the best places, in my opinion, to start with Batman, because it is a very concise, well thought out story. It's a really good intro to how things work in Gotham, to the different characters that we're going to see, to the different people in Bruce's life, and the motivations behind why he is Batman, because we get to very much see him being the detective in this story. He is trying to figure out what's going on with this crime. He's trying to figure out who this killer is. He is trying to stop people from dying, which is kind of his main thing, is I don't want people to die. That's kind of why he does what he does. I really liked the kind of juxtaposition that would happen between the different holidays and then kind of the villain of the week, I guess, as it would be, or the villain of the month, because the way that this works is every month we'll kind of get a cameo from one of the, like, big Batman rows that you know. Selina's throughout, because this is kind of the beginning of the first go that they have at a relationship, and Bruce is a mess, so it doesn't work, but who's surprised, because Bruce is always a mess. I love it. I love the writing. I think it is such a fun story, and I think it is a really good, if you are looking to get into Batman, it's a very good place to start. I can definitely see the things they pulled from this and put in the movie. It's a very different story in the movie, but I can see the threads and the inspirations for what they chose to do in the movie in this book. I don't know if I told you I gave this 5 stars, but if I didn't tell you I gave this 5 stars, I gave it 5 stars. After that, I also finished Batman, Ego, and Other Tales by Darwin Cook. Darwin Cook, God rest his soul, is just my favorite person to have ever drawn Selina in the history of drawing Selina. He is the brilliant mind behind Catwoman's fantastic like black leather suit that she had for a lot of the 2000s, early 2000s, mid 2010s, before we changed it after the wedding. It's just such an icon. Like I love the purple, but it is just such an iconic and like really well thought out, like functional suit for what she does. This is a compilation of various stories that Darwin Cook either wrote, illustrated, or some covers that he did, just a bunch of iconic kind of stuff that he's known for, the stuff that people think of when they think of Darwin Cook. The two that I really liked, the two that I thought stood out was the title story, Batman Ego. You can definitely see what they pulled from Ego to put in the movie. Same thing with Selina's big score. You can definitely see the various plot elements and things about Selina that they pulled to put in the movie. Now, Selina's big score takes place a little bit different time period in Selina's career. It's kind of like a go-between between the second run of her title and then the third run of her title, which is the one that was headed up by Darwin and Ed Brubaker. I love Cook's art style. That was the highlight of this for me. You can definitely see him as a new writer in Batman Ego, but his art style is really the thing that draws me to what he's doing. He just is such a good job of like being expressive with his characters and having a take on the human form that is semi-realistic but also very stylized. And I love it. I love how he draws things. So, highly recommend this. If you have not read it and you are interested in the Batman, definitely read this. I ended up giving this 4 stars because some of the ones that he, like, wrote but did not illustrate, the art was questionable to me. In my, like, not my, like, why does Bruce look like he's made of Lego? And not in a good way, not like in the Lego Batman way, like in the... Why does his jaw just look like a brick? That was a very odd art style. After that, I was strong-armed into reading Heartstopper Volume 1 by Alice Oseman. I ended up giving this 4 stars. So this is about Nick and Charlie. They are a year 10 and a year 11 boy at a boys' school somewhere in England. Did I pay attention to where it was? No, I didn't. I like, if you were to tell me, I'd be like, yeah, that's where it happens. I don't remember. I just know it's at a boys' school, and Charlie is going into his 10th year. He came out as gay in year 9, and that was a very, very tough year for him. So this is kind of like he's going back into this. Things have kind of settled. He is not being teased and harassed as much, and he's just trying to kind of keep his head down and not, like, rock the boat too much. And then he ends up being assigned to Nick, and Nick is, everyone assumes, including Nick, that he is straight, but through his friendship with Charlie, he starts to think that maybe that is not the case. This was super, super cute. I thought that Alice Oseman's drawing style works really well for the style that is the story that is being told in this graphic novel. If you don't know, this is the first half of the Heartstopper TV show that just came out on Netflix. I have Volume 2. I'm gonna get to it eventually. I really like the way that she explored both of the characters and the things that she was like telling us about their experiences and what they're living through, and she does a really good job of like taking people's experiences and through dialogue, because this is a visual medium, through dialogue, giving us such a good idea of what has happened without having to be super, super exposition-y as you might be in a novel. So she did a really good job of giving us the context, creating the atmosphere, and moving us forward in this story, and also creating characters that are just like, I mean, like, Nick Nelson is the human epitome of a golden retriever. Just like is, without a doubt. And Charlie is a nervous, anxious wreck, and such a mood. I thought it was really cute to kind of watch Charlie and Nick's little friendship kind of develop into a crush, and it kind of ends where I like where it ends. I know where it goes after that, but I like where it ends. So, yeah, if you're gonna read it, you might want to have volume 2 handy. The next book that we finished is an audiobook that I read, and that is Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. I gave this 5 stars. It was just a wild ride. And that makes it sound like there's so much more action than there is in this book. So this is about Alex Stern. She is the sole survivor of this very gruesome murder that happened. Like 5 people ended up dead. No one's entirely sure what happened. She was found asleep in the bed with all of these bodies in the apartment. That's where she is, in the flat with her. This kind of is the deciding factor for a secret society at Yale to kind of pull her in to have her be what is called the Dante. Basically, her job, or she's learning to do stuff that, like magic, that can help protect the different secret societies as they do their rituals. Their rituals tend to kind of open up the veil between the living and the dead, and there are ghosts at Yale, and they get drawn to it, and so basically her job is to make sure that the ghosts don't interfere, and we go into this, and something has happened. We're not entirely sure what, but we know that the person who was training her is no longer there. He's gone. He's just gone. We don't know what happened to him. We don't know why it happened. We have zero answers to anything starting this out, and a whole bunch of questions. And then we're following her as she is trying to figure out, how do we fix this entire situation? This is a book that I read for a reading vlog that will be coming out soon. You may have already guessed what the theme of the reading vlog is going to be. I have also mentioned it on Cal's channel I've already mentioned it. There is a dark academia kind of discussion that I did with Cal over at Retrieving Books for the first 2 books that I did in this reading vlog, and then I finished the last 3 books in this vlog project thing here. I've heard people talk about that it's very boring and they weren't able to get into it, and I kind of understand, because the way that it works is we'll start going into a situation, and then it'll somehow segue, and it segues really well into like the past and stuff that has happened to Alex that has bearing on the future. And then we are also going into a past timeline for, like, there's 2 points of view, and we're going into a past timeline to see from the point of view of the person that was training her when we start this novel. Their point of view slowly kind of goes away because we don't know where they are right now. I understand why it's not everyone's cup of tea. I really enjoyed it as someone who likes sitting with characters and sitting in their heads, and I don't necessarily need a lot of action in order for me to feel like things are happening, because there can be emotional plot and there can be like physical plot, and this is very much like emotional, mental, introspective plot stuff going on in development that's happening inside of her versus stuff going on that she is doing, if that makes sense. I thought that it all came together really well, though, and like the last, I don't know, it was an audiobook, but the last good chunk of this book is just like, go. You just keep going, just keep reading. It just grabs you, sucks you in, and you're like, I need to know all of the answers right now, and because there's a sequel, guess what you don't get? You don't get all. You get some of the answers, but they just leave you with more questions. It's so much fun. I enjoyed it somewhat. I just wanted to know if I was right about a couple of things, and I was right about a few things, but then I didn't get answers. It's very spooky, very mysterious. She's investigating these weird murders that are happening, and she's also finding out some weird stuff about the past of the school, and like it's starting to look like some of that might be linked together, and some stuff people might be trying to redo some stuff, and the main big bad was just like, wow, what? I knew that character had something to do with something, but I didn't see that coming. What a wild twist. You really think that this book is going to be about something completely different from a lot of the book. And then it's like, well, it was about this, but not quite. And just takes a left-hand turn, and you're like, what the heck just happened? It was so good. The next book that I read is one that I was sent so I could review the second book, which came out May 3rd, but that is Capture the Crown by Jennifer Estep. I do have a review coming out giving my full thoughts on this and the second book, Tear Down the Throne. I'll go into detail all there, but I do want to mention a few things about this book in particular. I gave this 4 stars. It is a fantasy romance about Princess Gemma Ripley. She is a princess, but she is also a spy, so on the one hand, she is very, very, like, she's crafted this kind of image where everyone thinks she's an idiot, and she's only interested in pretty gowns and looking good and, like, all of that stuff, but she uses that and her place as a princess to kind of go around the kingdom and spy, and then she will also, like, go undercover. We find her, she's undercover in mines where they mine this thing called tearstone, which is a very important metal in this kind of economy that they have. Some of it has been going missing, and she finds out that the people behind the plot are the Morricones, which is the ruling family of their like mortal enemy in the country of Morta, and she ends up also running into the bastard son of their queen, who she might have a thing for, but she's pretending like she doesn't because they are mortal enemies, and so obviously that can't happen. I mean, thanks, the lady doth protest too much. So this is definitely like emphasis on the romance. I'll get into it a little bit more in my review, but like this is a romance that is set in a fantasy setting. This is not something you're going to be going to because you are seeing a lot of really in-depth world building. The world building is there, but it is not like on the level that you are going to see in some like stuff where the fantasy part, the world is the main focus and you just happen to have a romance happening. This is a romance that happens to happen in a fantasy world. I thought this was a fun read. Like the romance, the pining and the angst and the tension is definitely there. Gemma is a little bit straightforward, just stubborn and other things. Like she's really funny to read about because you just are sitting there going, my God, just to take a deep breath. You do not have to be this intense all the time about every single thing. Like, take a breath, ma'am. It doesn't always have to be life or death. Although you kind of get an idea of, like, she's got good reasons to feel that way, but also just take a deep breath and just exist for a minute, sweetie. Like, just exist. This is going to be really good if you like books. It's not quite at the level that The Cruel Prince is, but if you like that kind of dynamic, if you like two people that do not trust each other but are having to work together and are trying to manipulate each other to some extent to their own ends, this is going to be a good one for you to read. She definitely ends up just... she's a little dumb. I'll be honest. The signs were all there, sweetie, and she did not see any of them. But that's a whole other thing. This one does end in a place where you're just like, what the heck? Why would you? What? No one is happy with that ending. Nothing good. Not. I mean, it's satisfying, but I was glad I had the second book. They didn't want to stay there, so we moved them up there to see if maybe that would do better. Anyways, the next book that I ended up reading was A Foul is Fair by Hannah Capin. I actually ended up reading this while I was over in Utah with Cal and Brianna. Cal and I listened to this book doing a lot of driving and other things while we were over there. We just kind of buddy read it together because it was part of our Dark Academia buddy read thing that we were doing. Again, up top, we did read a couple of the books and talk about them. This is a retelling of Macbeth with a little bit of a twist. I gave it 4 stars. So this is about Jade, and I will say trigger warnings for sexual assault and suicide. The assault is not, or the rape is not seen on page, but it is mentioned quite a bit because that is kind of the inciting incident for Jade. She goes to a party, ends up getting raped by one of the very prominent boys at this other school, and so she decides that what she's going to do is she's going to take all of them down. She does it by kind of getting close to this boy named Mac. This is a really clever, in my opinion, Macbeth retelling. It's got some mixed reviews. It's not got the highest rating, but I thought that it did. Like, I can see why people would, especially considering the way that it ends, although if you've read Macbeth, you know how it ends, so why you'd be surprised and upset about that. I can see why people might not think this is the best book that they've read. I can see why people, like especially purists, may not be happy with some of the liberties that the author took, but I really liked this kind of look at Lady Macbeth's story being retold as a woman who is seeking vengeance, as a woman who is really is the power player behind the scenes. They really, Hannah Capin leans into the manipulative and the very calculating nature of Lady Macbeth that we see in the play, and she takes it up to 10 in this book, and I thought it was a really interesting way to do things. I thought that the way that everything kind of happened was also very interesting. We spend a lot of, it's really funny, we spend a lot of time on like the early acts of Macbeth, and then very little time on the end where everyone is everything's going to hell in a handbasket. So, and that was interesting. It made for some interesting pacing choices. I thought it was an interesting and fresh take on the story, and I liked what the author did with it. I thought there was I liked the interpretation that the author had, and I thought that they did a really good job of creating this retelling and doing what they set out to do in this story. The next book, I was trying not to read this book after Foul is Fair. I was actually trying to like split them up a little bit somehow, but it didn't happen that way. Because I was like, I don't want to read 2 Shakespeare books in a row, but it didn't happen that way, and I'm not mad about it because this was a very, very good book, and it was interesting to read this after having just read a Macbeth retelling. But that is If We Were Villains by Emil Rio. This is about Oliver, and he's being let out after 10 years in jail for a murder that has been very controversial. There's a lot that people don't know, and there is a detective who's like, I don't think that what you said in court is actually entirely exactly what happened. I think that there were some other things and some stuff that you have not told me, and I want to know what those things were. Please. And he basically convinces Oliver to sit down and tell him what happened. And Oliver's like, well, I've done my time. I can tell you the real and the full story as long as you promise that no one is going to end up being put away for this. Like, I did the time. You're not going to get anyone else involved. All of that stuff. This was perfect. It was so good. It's just good. Very purple, very flowery prose, very dramatic prose, very much in line with theater and Shakespeare. You've got a group of 6 people that are obsessed. Like, they are at this place. I don't remember the name of it, but they're at this college where you go and you get your degree, but you're very much shut off from the outside world and you are invested. Like, everything they've done, they've eaten, breathed, slept Shakespeare for the last 4 years. They're going into their final year. This is the big year, and they're going in to do King Lear, I believe. They're doing we're going into doing Julius Caesar. Just the way that Emil Rio was able to work in so much reference to Shakespeare in such a clever, interesting way, in the plot, in the settings, in different things that they'll just spout Shakespeare just randomly, and I'm like, oh my god, this is what it's like to hang out with theater kids. It was so, like, I went to theater school and I was just like, oh wow, I've been here, we've done this feels familiar. It was really well done. The mystery element, the way that everything is built around things is done so well. There's so much foreshadowing in this plot, and all of it ends up making sense eventually, and you're just like, wow, that was just well done. If you are a Shakespeare fan, you need to read this book. You do. If you are anyone who likes Shakespeare, who likes theater, who likes the arts, who likes things to get dark and twisty and political, just read them. It is an interesting just look at humanity and why people do what they do, and how our relationships with people can motivate us to do different things. I'll leave it at that. I don't want to give away all that much. But good writing, good characters, good story, interesting mystery. Yeah. After that, I went into the Weekend Word Nerdathon, and the rest of my books were read in that weekend. There is a vlog for that somewhere coming at some point, I do believe. I think I vlogged it. I don't know. I've been really bad about vlogging, so I may not have vlogged as much of it as I thought I did, because I thought I vlogged a whole bunch of stuff for the Batman vlog, and then I was like, there's only like 6 clips for this. Why is there only 6 clips? I could have sworn I talked to the camera more often than this. Apparently I did not. We started that out with Black Beth by Alec Worley. I gave this 3 stars. It is a graphic novel that I was given for review through NetGalley. What it is it is a compilation of various like sort of short stories or vignettes about this character called Black Beth. She was created in the 1980s, and like the comic was sent out in some sort of horror anthology, and then she kind of just disappeared. And then the comic, like the overarching like people that owned the comic ended up being bought by the company that Alec Worley worked for, and so he came in and he and a couple of other people did some stories about Black Beth with this character. The basic premise of Black Beth is that she is a woman living in, I believe, like 11th century Spain. Did they do any research? I'm not entirely sure because I don't know a lot about 11th century Spain, but there are a few things that I was like, this is definitely a fantastical take on everything happening here. But she is the sole survivor of her village. Her village ends up getting wiped out when the baron, the neighboring baron, comes and he sees her and she's so beautiful and he wants to marry her, but she refuses, and so he, in revenge, kills everyone, and including trying to kill her. She gets found by a knight who has stopped being a knight because he's blind, and he ends up training her and helping her and nursing her back to health, and she decides that her job is going to be to get revenge on this evil, evil man. And then we kind of go, as we go through the graphic novel for these other vignettes that we get, she's trying to get revenge on just basically people who are evil in general. I definitely would read more of this if they were to, like, this seems to be like kind of a standalone thing. If they were to make it like a running comic, I would definitely be interested in reading more of it. There are various, like, there are several different art styles throughout this, although most of it is written by Alec Worley. I found it interesting. I found it compelling. I definitely would be interested. I'm always here for a woman's revenge story, so hi. I would have read more if there had been more, but there were only like 3 or 4 stories in this, and I thought that they were decent. I would have liked maybe a little bit more continuity between them to some extent, like a obvious plot line going through, because these were just very much like one-shots that were done at various different times. I thought that the first issue that is done by Blas Gallego, I believe his name is, who is the original creator of this character, was a really interesting look at how you can use just black and white drawing to evoke things, and I really liked some of the way that he used light and shadow and all of that stuff. I thought it was interesting. If you see it, pick it up, see if you like it. I think it's going to appeal to a bunch of people. Again, there is stuff in it that I'm like, this could have been done better. There's definitely stuff going around the fact that her sidekick, whose name I can't remember, is blind, and there are things I think could have been handled better there. There's also, like, some questionable stuff about, like, historical accuracy and what we're doing here, and maybe some representation that we could have done better. I did think that Beth's representation was done pretty well, though. I did like, for the most part, how that was handled throughout the story. From there, I went on to a graphic novel that is in fact based on actual history, and that is Grass by Kim Suk Gendry Kim. This is a graphic novel, a novelization of a woman who was one of the comfort women when the Japanese came and took over Korea and China. She is originally Korean. This is one of the books I picked up for Koreadathon, and I found through the host's videos for that. She ends up being sold as kind of a mid to late teenager to one of these camps. She spends the entirety of the war being a victim of military sexual slavery, and then it follows her life after they are finally freed. It's about a real woman who was an activist, and it is based on an interview that the artist did with her. I will warn you, I think the artist does a very good job of handling the subject matter, of dealing with the fact that we have this young teen girl that ends up being raped, and that's something you know is coming, something that you see. I think that she has a very visceral depiction that is not graphic, but it is still, like, it's not visually graphic, but emotionally it is. So I would caution going into this, make sure you are in a good headspace. It is not a happy, feel-good, go-lucky story. This is about a historical injustice that happened, and it is just, like, there's so much just terribleness that the Koreans and the Chinese suffered, both during the Sino-Japanese War and then during World War II. And this examines all of that. This examines the effect that Japanese imperialism had on the people who were affected by it. I think it does a very good job of highlighting a part of history that we don't talk about, like, and a lot of people do not know about. I don't think a lot of people raised in the US or in Europe know about some of the things that happened. Don't get me wrong, like, what the Americans did to the Japanese at the end of the war was terrible and should not have been done because those were civilians. But it is a very good reminder that a lot of the time when there is war, there are no good guys in war. It really made you think, and it made you examine what histories we choose to tell and how the people who are hurt by these conflicts end up being treated and handled. Next, we need to talk about a perennial fave, and that is Fullmetal Alchemist by Hiromu Arakawa. I read volumes 11 and 12. I finally got to the Winry volume. during this little readathon thing. This is, a lot of this runs together. Like, it's wild how quickly we got to Briggs. I was expecting us to be miles away from Briggs, and suddenly we're there. We are in the Briggs plotline. And I'm like, when did we get, how did we get here? What happened? This is about a pair of brothers that are trying to get their real bodies back. They are alchemists, and when they were very young, they tried to resurrect their mother and paid the price for it. One of them is just like a soul tethered to a suit of armor now. The other one lost a leg and an arm in the exchange to trying to get his mom back and also in trying to save his brother. And so they're trying to find something called the Philosopher's Stone so that they will be able to remain, like, will be able to fix what they did. And I love it. It is so good. If you like stories about brothers, it is a very good one. Their relationship is so wonderful, but also it has so many fun, interesting characters. Not this guy, though. We hate this guy. We'll go with her because she's really cool. Winry is one of the best characters in the thing, and I wish this was as much about her as it was about the boys. But whole other thing. They are currently involved in this whole government plot, and they are learning a lot of things about the history of their country at this point. There is their country has committed a genocide, and the country is facing the consequences of that in some of the things that are happening in this particular in some of these storylines. And I liked the way that was handled. I do think that there could have been, like, the author could have gone a little bit harder on some of the individual actions of all of the soldiers involved in this, because the entire military was involved in this genocide. And there's some bigger things at play, but, like, I think there could have been a harder line taken there, but I did, for the most part, like the way that we talked about this history. And I do like the fact that she kind of shows how everyone suffers when there is violence at this level. Like, there is no one who ends up being untouched by what has happened and what they've done. We then go into kind of more of the, like, learning about what's going on currently, and I can't tell you a lot of that. But I love it. It's got some of the best, like, Winry really gets to shine in this arc, and we really get to see her start to, like, we've seen a little bit of her starting to kind of stand up and try and be, like, strong and, like, be more, like, she is a badass as it is, but, like, just be someone who is a person of action and doesn't just wait for people. And I really like how we are getting into that and handling that. So I love it. It's so good. If you like things about siblings and childhood friends, if you like childhood friends to lovers, this is a very good one for you, by the way. And Kimberly, can someone set him on fire? Can we do that? That would be great. I did end up giving these 4 stars and 5 stars, respectively, since I don't think I mentioned that. From there, I moved on to Catwoman, When in Rome, again by Jeff Loeb and Tim Sal. This is kind of like a little side adventure that Selena has between The Long Halloween and the sequel to that, the Batman Dark Victory. And she has gone to Rome. She has some questions about her past, some questions that she thinks are linked to what happened with the Holiday Killer and all of that stuff. And so she's going with the Riddler because she thinks that he will be able to help her put some of the pieces together. She goes and she ends up, like, continually running into trouble and continually running into some really weird, like, instances of baddies from Gotham happening to also, or things from Gotham happening to also have made its way to Rome. And she's a little confused about that. I thought that this was a really fun solo adventure. I really enjoyed it. I would love to see a spin-off kind of thing with Zoe Kravitz's Catwoman kind of doing this exact same thing, although the conclusion that she comes to in this, we already know at the end of the Batman. So she really doesn't need to go to Rome, but it is an interesting and fun storyline, and it gives you a lot of Selena and Selena's character development and a lot of who she is and why she does what she does. I always love when we get stories where we get to see that Selena is more than just, like, a thief, that she is actually very clever, that she actually is able to think through things and figure things out and put pieces together. And I like it when we have those stories. Highly recommend it if you have any interest in learning more about Catwoman. And then we will wrap this whole thing up with Batman Dark Victory by Jeff Loeb and Tim Sal. As I mentioned, this is the sequel to The Long Halloween. We're following Bruce after the events of that, and someone has started killing people again. Big surprise. And so he's going to the Holiday Killer. He's getting obsessed with all of these things. And then also in the middle of all of this, a couple of circus performers at Haley's Circus die, and he ends up taking in this very small angry gremlin named Dick Grayson. It's really funny seeing Dick as a small child who is mad at the world, knowing who he ends up being as an adult, because he literally, like, has a little bit of, like, I'm mad, and my parents are dead, and I want answers, and then he takes one look at Bruce and is like, oh no, we don't want to end up like that. That's, no thank you. I think that this is a really, like, good detective story, and a good kind of, like, this one feels like there is more at stake. This one feels more personal, because we're dealing with Harvey Dent and Two-Face and the fallout of the last graphic novel that we read, and there are a lot of unanswered questions. There's a lot that, like, the plot that happens in this, the things that are happening in this, are bringing up questions that Bruce did not know needed to have been answered way back when. It's basically following, the killer is killing off different people that were involved with, like, were cops at the time that Harvey was DA before he became Two-Face. I think this shows Bruce's kind of internal struggle and his motives really well, and it shows why he gets obsessed with things, what he is trying to do, and how he kind of fails at that. Like, he has a goal in mind, but he can be so single-minded and so obsessive in things that he ends up not, maybe going a bit off of what his goal is. Love seeing little baby Dick in this. He's just the most cutest little thing. I love him so much. He is such a fantastic character, and he does not let you down. There are such interesting parallels that are drawn between, like, 10-year-old Dick and a 10-year-old Bruce, both of them reeling from the death of their parents and all of this, and Dick has so many questions about, like, why Bruce brought him in, all this, that, and the other thing, and it is just funny to watch him kind of just be a creature of chaos. He just is. I think it does a very good job of setting up why Bruce decides that he is going to have this child help him in crime fighting. It does a really good job of giving you, like, making it very obvious that, like, this child was going to get himself killed. And so Bruce was like, you might as well do this with parental supervision, I guess. So, I just, like, he tries so hard not to involve Dick and still get Dick the answers that he wants. And Dick is just like, no, I'm gonna be a kid with no frontal lobe development whatsoever. I'm just gonna do what I think needs to happen. And you will have to stop me from getting myself turned into a smear on the pavement. He's very good practice for what will be Jason Todd later. He finds the most troubled children, and then the ones that are not troubled find him. It's great. Now, as far as favorite and least favorite go, I'm gonna say Black Beth. I just think that Black Beth could have had a little bit more story to it. I think that there are some things that the authors did not consider when they were writing it, and I would have liked to see those explored with a little bit more care and a little bit more thought towards, are we using stereotypes and what's going on? There was some interesting, like, kind of bucking of stereotypes in some places, but I just would have liked more in the story and things like that. So it was good, it was entertaining, it was a solid read, but it was not my favorite thing. My favorite thing is going to be a hard one, because I don't choose rereads. That's right, I don't choose rereads. So I guess we're gonna say favorite thing was If We Were Villains by Emma Rio. This was just so good. I had so much fun reading it, and I was right. That ending, guys. Like, people are like, this ending is ambiguous. And I'm like, no, it's not. How is that ending ambiguous? You don't see what it's gonna happen, but you know what's gonna happen. How is it ambiguous? Y'all know the drill. If you are feeling chatty, let me know what your favorite and or least favorite books for the month of May were. I'm really interested to see what you thought of them. If you are not feeling chatty, but you want to let me know that you watched to the end of the video, let's go ahead, leave me the little bird, because there's a robin on there. So just leave me the bird emoji. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. Also, if you enjoyed this video, I'll have a couple over here. I will have that Batman vlog that I mentioned up here, and I will have that Dark Academia discussion right here. That is it for now, my friends. Happy reading, and I will see you later when we will talk about more wordy, nerdy things. Bye!